All right, do we have any questions from the whole day or the whole conference so far? And Phil up the back is the first one. Who do you want to address your question to, Phil? Oh, anybody willing to answer? Go ahead, Quill, and I'll repeat the questions. Good.
Giant turtles and whatever else through the fossil records. Do we have any evidences of a man or humans being of a giant proportion in the fossil records?
Okay, the ones that I've seen, the biggest ones I've seen are sort of up there compared to me. Most of the sort of giants you see on the YouTube, etc., are fakes, frauds, Photoshop images. Right, those giant skulls, etc., found in Greece, all totally imaginary. So no, in terms of fossils, we find no human skeletons outside the range of whether it be Goliath or the modern day giants. Okay?
So would there be an explanation of why insects, birds, animals have been gigantic, whereas man has been somewhat more confined?
Andy?
Yeah, I'll just say a brief word on that. On the insects, there is certainly some evidence of air trapped in amber where you can actually analyze the oxygen content compared with the nitrogen, that it is slightly more. We're not talking about more than 1 or 2%, but 1 or 2% is significant because if you go too far, you'll actually start burning up everything with too much oxygen. You know what it's like having lightning here. You know, you start a forest fire, you'd start it even more easily if you went up to, say, 30% oxygen in the air. But at the moment, it's 21%. If you went up to, say, 23 or 24, it would have a big impact on the ability to actually diffuse oxygen into the blood, which is how the insects do it. As you saw on the spiracles on the nymph, as it was becoming a dragonfly breathes through the side holes. All insects do this through spiracles, and they diffuse oxygen they don't have lungs, they diffuse it into their blood. And they can therefore get an increase in size. Now, reptiles, John can say more on this and others here, but reptiles, which is a totally different procedure, of course, do have lungs, but reptiles keep on growing and they don't stop growing. Now, if you've got lots of vegetation for them to feed on, and lots of, animals, carnivorous, to feed on as well, then there's no reason why they should stop growing. And there's every reason to believe that before the flood, the environment had much more luscious growth everywhere. Antarctica indicates that it had loads of vegetation under the ice. Of course, that wouldn't have been sitting where it is now. Continental drift, not at the speeds that the evolutionist says, but massive change in the geography now from the past. But nevertheless, wherever that landmass was before, it indicates that there was luscious growth everywhere. So I think there's every indication that creatures were growing to much greater size because of that.
Diane, we had a question that came in on the Ask side about the size of human giants. What limiting factors limit man? In fact, we discovered limit many creatures growing vertically.
Yes, there is a question on the Ask site about this. With people, we do not grow throughout our adult life. Most women actually stop around 15 and 16. Some men will grow into their 20s, but from then on...
We start growing that way.
We start growing in other directions. But growing vertically, we just stop. And in fact, our bones change. The growth centres that allow us to grow vertically actually close down and close over. So whatever stimulus we might get, whatever environment we might live in, our bones cannot grow any taller. It's something that is designed in our bodies. And the reason for that is because we are vertical creatures. So all of our weight goes through our heads, down through our spines, and our spines are designed to evenly balance the bones around the line of gravity, down through the hips and down through the legs.
That's right.
So we have to have all of our weight going down through our bones, so our bones have to be strong enough to hold it up. The animals that do grow throughout their lives, like the reptiles and the crocodiles, think of how they move and how they live. You know, they're low-slung, sprawling creatures, so their weight is distributed horizontally. And a lot of them spend a fair bit of their time in water, the ones that keep growing, like crocodiles start off as cute little fellas you can hold in your hand, but they can grow to be really, really huge, like the ones that get in the Northern Territory news every week that eat American tourists.
Eats American tourists.
I think American tourists must have more salt or spice or something like that.
So any Brits been eaten yet?
I don't think they're tasty enough. but anyway, it is to do with, it's just a law of physics and a law in terms of how much weight you have to bear through our bones. And our bones have to be strong but light. So our long bones are actually a bit like tubular steel. They're not solid. They have hollow insides. That structure is very strong. But if you increase the size of that structure, so if you kept on growing, you also increase the weight, and you get to the stage where your body cannot sustain that weight, because bone is actually quite a dynamic tissue. It's not like the fossil bones that John digs up. Living bone is full of living cells. It has a big blood supply. So your heart and your lungs have to work hard to supply that bone and keep it going. So you do get to the stage where your body just cannot sustain that size skeleton. So it is built into our physiology. When you get to a certain size and a certain age, your bones stop growing, and no matter what sort of environment you live in, they will not grow any taller.
And this is true of all vertical creatures?
Make a comment there. I can't overemphasize the fact that in man there is this growing centre, we call it the epiphyseal plate, and it's under hormonal control, intelligently regulated hormonal control. And it goes through cycles that eventually stop, the epiphyseal plate closes, no more growth occurs. We were asked at one place a question, because of the long ages before the flood, couldn't there be huge giants? No. Be certain size, but no, because there is a limit, and that occurs usually fairly young in life, and that's the end of it. No more growth. End of story.
Okay, next question. Yes, sir.
I just wonder if someone can explain about pigmentation, different colours of skin, and how that's all come from.
Wait
Before
till
you go
tomorrow.
on that, we're doing that tomorrow, aren't you, Diane?
Yes, we're doing
Do you have a 30-second reply? Are you coming back tomorrow? Oh, well, you'll miss out then. Stream it, that's right. Give us a quick answer, Diane.
It is possible to get all of the different skin colours from one original couple. A lot of the skin colours, the very extreme ends of the skin colours, the very black and the very white, are actually a degeneration. Sorry, folks. Particularly as there are a lot of fairly pale people here, including me, but I have to blame my pale pommy ancestors for that.
I'm as well. And I'll include. I'm a mutant as well.
We're going to talk about those too tomorrow. But yeah, it is possible. All of the different races on Earth have the same number of pigment-producing cells. They're called melanocytes. But what is the difference is how active they are, and you can get huge extremes in how active they are, from producing almost no melanin to being constantly turned on at full blast, producing melanin all the time. Adam and Eve were probably somewhere in the middle, because that sort of middle brown colour is about the best colour to have, where you are protected from the ultraviolet light so you don't get skin cancer, but you can still make vitamin D, which is made from sunlight stimulating the cells in your skin, and you can respond to the changes in the ultraviolet light. So original skin colour, somewhere in the middle. Most people on Earth these days are somewhere in the middle. The two very extremes are degenerate mutations.
Well, so much for us Scots. Thank you, Diane. The rest of the answer is tomorrow, and it is
Redheads.
exciting. One more question? Down the front here, yes?
John Osgood, with regard to the
It's an interesting question. There will always be discussion about this, but several of the sections in the Bible talk about this is the generation of, and this is the generation. And it's been pointed out that this has a likeness in some of the ancient records. The only difference is it's reversed. Instead of being the ending, it's the beginning. But nonetheless, it does give the impression that he could have had some records which were handed down, whether they were handed down verbally first of all, and then perhaps put on clay tablets or whatever. And this has been a genuinely considered thing, but this only applies to a certain portion of Genesis. A large portion, of course, from Exodus onward, we're looking at Mount Sinai. Okay, Genesis itself, these families clearly had records that were handed down verbally and possibly also in writing. I mean, we've got a very important family here we're following down. They knew they had an importance despite the fact that they didn't know the whole story. So, yeah, there's got to be some sort of records there, but the majority of the 5 books from Revelation. And I'm sure the Lord corrected a few things about the first part too.
Yeah, I'll just throw in one comment there before we shut down for the afternoon, and we'll have our break till tea time. One pastor who'd read a comment with this was really concerned that this was a denial of revelation. And I said, well, look, in your New Testament, isn't it true that Paul quotes even from the pagans? He quotes from Cretan records, he quotes from the poets, he even quotes from previous Jewish records such as the law, right? And yet we still don't deny that Paul is being inspired by the Holy Spirit, even though he's using previous records to do so. So they're not at loggerheads with one another at all. Trust you've been blessed by the afternoon. You guys are going to be hanging around for a while if people want to grab you. Okay, that's great.